Well, greetings, music lovers. I'm Roger Bowie, and today I'm rapping with Paul McLaney from Stockton-on-Tees originally, and
Yeah.
now firmly ensconced in the land of the Kiwi, along with all his various musical personas. The most intriguing being Gramsci. Is it Gramsci or Gramsci?
In Italian, it would be Gramsci, but the band's
Gramsci.
called Gramsci. So
You
yeah.
you use Gramsci. Well, I stick to the Italian. Why did you name your band or project Gramsci?
Well, when that first came about, it was in the late 90s, early 2000s. And if you've read much about Gramsci's ideas about counterhegemonic strategy and that sort of stuff, I just love the idea. It's so Gramscian to type Gramsci into Google.
Yeah.
I just love the idea of people typing that name in and all this other stuff pops up. That's a complete example of counter-hegemonic strategy. And what that really means is, in terms of revolution, not rather than smashing the existing system because you dislike it, involving yourself within it and trying to affect change from within that. And I suppose at the time that I was getting involved in music, it felt very, in terms of my career, very easy to knock labels and the mechanisms of the music industry. And we all heard horror stories. But, I just wanted to get involved and try and, find some sophistication within a musical conversation with the public, rather than just the homogenic pop stuff. And that's, that never really goes away, and it swings and roundabouts in terms of genres. I mean, I think was it the Beatles that were told that the guitars were on the way out. Yes. In 1962. So I mean, here we are. My album's covered in them, so it's been going out for a long time.
Did you pick out the Scritti Politti? Of also, they got their name from reading or studying Gramsci.
I didn't know that, but I did know that it's one guy as well, isn't it? Scritti Politti. It's one.
I know. Well, yeah, it is one guy. The name escapes me, but
I've always been quite attracted to that. Like a big thing for me when I was a bit early on was Matt Johnson.
Oh yeah, great band.
Matt Johnson, but has that moniker, and I suppose that's where Dimmer started for Shane Carter, and I was always a really big fan of Stereotype Effects and stuff. Yeah. But no, I didn't know that about Scritti Politti.
Yeah, it's interesting, and Gramsci himself is an interesting character with cultural hegemony, and it's hard to work out whether he was truly a violent revolutionary or he was just trying to replicate the tools that he saw the bourgeois using against the working class to stop them escaping.
Well, I came across his writings for the first time. I was studying law and doing Treaty of Waitangi, and his name came up in reference to the Waitangi Tribunal as an example of Gramscian counter-hegemonic strategy, in the sense that the Waitangi Tribunal has no law to legislate, has no power to legislate. But when the Court of Appeal needs to decide something in front of, they refer to the findings of the Waitangi Tribunal and then create precedent law. So they are actually making law,
yes,
within a system that already exists. So I've always found that concept of resistance and change quite compelling, as opposed to the quite topically violent response to anything.
Yeah. Well, Mussolini didn't like him, that's for sure. So you've just released then as Gramsci the 5th album, I think it is. Yeah.
Is it? Yes,
anyway,
it's the 5th. Yes.
It's called the Hinterlands, and
yep.
To quote you, the album that all my musical adventures and experiments have led me to. Musical adventures and experiments. Tell us about, how would you define those?
Well, I suppose my recorded output has come out through 3 different pseudonyms, really. Gramsci, the Impending Adorations, and Paul McLaney. And I suppose the way I would probably looking back, I didn't need to compartmentalize it. Neil Young never seemed to have to, and other people like that, they just, 1 minute it's a noise record, 1 minute it's synthesizers, and 1 minute it's white noise, and the next minute it's acoustic guitars. But for me, the compartmentalization of it is that anything that comes out under Paul McLaney is primarily acoustic and live. You know, it's a performance. It's without artifice. You know, so it's in that string sections and acoustic guitars and pianos and you know, jazz drummers, and you know, and it's generally recorded live in a room in one take, like a photograph, like a black and white photograph.
Yep.
And then with the impending adorations, which is more in the sort of electronica sort of music concrete sort of space, where, you know, we're doing a lot of things like chopping up found sound. Like a lot of the beats on those records are made out of fire and things like that. And I was really interested in what I would call the music of the mind, like music that's beyond instruments. Like there is nothing recognizably, apart from the voice, nothing recognizably like a drum or an electric guitar or a piano or what have you. It's more, if you could record your thoughts, what would that sound like? So it has complete freedom and sense of its musical palette, with the one parameter being primarily not trying to use traditional instrumentation. And then, you know, Paul McLaney is the black and white photograph, then Gramsci is the cinematic,
yes,
ambition on steroids thing. You know, it's the big picture,
well,
it's the music. Yeah.
It's the big painting.
Yeah, it's the oil painting.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I've always been reminding myself I've got to get into your back catalogue. I now discover, to my great pleasure, that I can get your solo stuff. At least I can't get impending adorations, but I can get your solo stuff on the new streaming system that I finally subscribed to, called Qobuz.
Okay, I'll check that out. I'll make sure that everything gets moved across, because
I don't listen to Spotify, and Qobuz gives me actually 24 bits sometimes. Sometimes it frightens the hell out of me because it sounds better than vinyl.
Well, you know, that's the argument. Is, I mean, I my personal feeling about vinyl and stuff, you know, and is the physical totem of it.
Yeah,
you know, you could listen to Qobuz but be holding the record, because for me, like the artwork and that tangible
that's true too.
Object is, it also feels like, for me, I've always felt like the artwork on a record is like the palette. It's like the suggested color palette for listening to that record.
Yes.
You know, like, you know, something like Satanic Majesty's Request as opposed to Sticky Fingers. They're very different sort of color palettes to listen to the Rolling Stones with, aren't they?
One Rolling Stones album I haven't got, but I've been listening to it a lot lately because the guys did She's a Rainbow, and my daughter, age 13, says, "Dad, I know that song. It's on TikTok."
It was used in a movie. It's a fantastic song. A friend of mine got married to it. I mean, that's a really interesting part of the Stones' evolution, isn't it? That sort of, before they became the world's best rock and roll band, they went to this really quite psychedelic sort of pop.
Well, they were heavy into psychedelics. They were all coming along in different times and doing their thing. It was quite chaotic if you read about it.
But I suppose, you know, that's the thing, you know, when you're talking about, you know, me having these different, you know, I've compartmentalized my output in that regard. But, you know, it seems these days people expect a band to be one thing and to sort of drill into it. And whereas the interesting careers are the ones that are all over the place. I mean, it's a long way from, I mean, the obvious example is it's a long way from Love Me Do to Golden Slumbers, you know.
But you know something, you've almost talked yourself into a re-release in an anthology form, to put all your personalities together. You're almost talking yourself into that. Is that an idea that you've had?
It very much is an idea, and I don't know if I've said this publicly, but the first letter of every Gramsci record is spelling under the word. So, and we're just about to release for the first time the entire Gramsci back catalogue on vinyl.
Right.
In anticipation of this anthology. And the impending adoration, similarly, the first 4 records spell the word gift, gestalt, intentions, further, and threshold.
Oh.
And so, you know, for me, there's been that long-term ambition to land something like that in 2025. That was that, like the soul.
You've heard that first on music.net, folks. How about that?
But it's because I heard a thing years ago that for this church it fits, that all their albums were going to be 4-letter words, and the L was moving backwards. Yeah. So it was hail, melt, blow. And the last album, which they didn't do, would have been a 4-letter word beginning with L.
Cool.
I just love all that. Again, that's like that mystique thing that we were talking about.
Yeah.
You know, well, did Keith Richards have his blood changed? You know, was Jimmy Page into Aleister Crowley? You know, it's like all that sort of, you know, the mystique around it. These days, you can just type it into Wikipedia and ask a question.
Then it becomes a conspiracy theory. It will. Now, speaking of that, major themes on the new album. It seems to me, you know, I mean, there's a mixture, but there's a lot of positive songs on this album, and then there are some sort of darker themes. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's about exploring the emotional interior with that idea. That sort of idea is the emotional interior being the hinterland.
Yeah.
You know, and obviously in the last, you know, couple of years, we've all had opportunity and sometimes been forced upon us to perhaps, you know, enter into that space and have a look around and really go for a wander.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, some things that you've been putting off dealing with, or some things that you didn't even know you had to deal with.
Yeah.
You know, it's like my experience at university was that one of three things generally happened to the people I was with at university. Because Dunedin's so cold and you're forced to sort of, again, forced into this emotional interior, you either ended up self-actualizing or on methadone or Prozac. You know, it's like some people, everyone looks inside and says something they don't like, as well as all the things they do like. And you've got, when you find things that you don't like, you've got a couple of options, right? You can face them head on and deal with them and, you know, work through them, or you can numb yourself to ever having to look at them ever again, or you just keep avoiding them. And you know, for me, this record is about exploring all of those things. And so, you know, there's songs about happiness and there's songs about
Epiphany,
you know, and you know,
heaven.
Who that one's about. You know, I actually think that song's me singing to me.
Yeah.
I think, you know, you got this. You know, like if you're ever in that moment where you have a not so positive thought about yourself, it's like, you know, you got to love yourself first before you can love everybody else.
You do. And Watershed's a little bit darker. Change is so intricate without a motive.
Yeah, that's about the evolution of life. You know, we all think that was it chaos and motion, magic and retrospect.
Yes.
You know, it's the idea of looking back with that retrospective sort of sense. You can see the pattern of it all. But I think there's, you know, for a certain point in life, I think you think it's like order with pockets of chaos, and the older you get, you realize it's just all chaos with pockets of order. And you know, that's what music is fundamentally. It's putting shape around chaos, you know, and doing it in a way that generates empathy. Because, you know, that's my big thing about music, that music without empathy is just noise. And I think, you know, I was reading the Simon Frith book, and he talks about it actually stretches time, because in order for you to hear a melody, you have to remember the last note, be conscious of the note that's happening, and have an anticipation for the next note. And that's how your brain holds melody. And so in a sense, it stretches time. Okay. And it ties in with a Thelonious Monk quote that I heard, where he said, don't think of the beat in a bar as a dot to land on, but as a circle to land in. And I was, you know, I feel like the great bands sort of stretch time, you know, like Waterloo Sunset. It always blows me away that it's not even 3 minutes long, but you feel like you've been on this odyssey by the time you get to the end of that song.
That's very interesting. I like that piece about the psychological effect of music. That guy who runs Lynn, the name escapes me.
Roger Lynn.
No, Lynn, the sound system guys.
Oh, yeah.
Tiefenbrahms, his surname. He defines music as touching from a distance because of the power of touch and the way to there's so many ways to convey emotion through a touch.
Definitely. I mean, they did those studies, didn't they, where they removed that from young children, and you know, none of them survived. It's quite a dark thought, but no, that's yeah, exactly. I mean, it's that, and to touch a previous aspect of yourself. Talking before about those records that you spend time with when you're very, very young, and you leave part of your soul in those records.
Yes.
So that when I go and listen to Minstrel in the Gallery by Jethro Tull now, I can commune emotionally with my 16-year-old self, because part of my 16-year-old self is in there. And I can remember, having, again, that word epiphanies, listening to that record, or emotional breakthroughs, or recognizing the first recognition of something, of a more sophisticated emotion, and being aware of the fact that you are maturing, or that there's a, and by maturing, I mean, there's a level of sophistication that's being applied to your emotional response to things.
Yeah. I have to go back to Benefit to get the equivalent for me.
Oh yeah, but that opening track, is it the one with the weird flutes, in long you? I can't remember. That's the first. With you there to help me, I probably will.
That's the one. That's the one. That's the one. That's the one. And Legend, the difference between knowledge and wisdom. That one kind of jumps out at me as the kind of song that Antonio Gramsci would like.
Oh, good. Yeah, he put on his. It's that was I'm quite proud of the lyrics in that one. They came very quickly in 3 different stages. Each I wrote each bit separately, they came sort of big on this idea of not pushing it, of not sort of just driving it in, and so the "Here beneath the altered skies, all the energies of heaven" was the last part to be written, and in the whole fake news stuff, and
conspiracies, and let's turn to the musicianship. You got a super group with Joel and Greg Haver and Marika Hodgson, and you, right?
Really, you can't ask for a better rhythm section. I mean, that's as good as any rhythm section in any band ever. I think, playing across the top of those musicians is it's like strap yourself in, and you just feel like you're sort of riding a chariot through the.
And you take most of the lead or all of the lead?
I'm playing all the guitars on the record.
All the guitars.
Joe was unavailable for the sessions. It was in a sort of lockdown type situation, and we were meant to have a week rehearsal, and we ended up having one day. But it was a pretty magical day, and we're like, okay, let's not overthink this and iron it out too much. Let's go into the studio and get it. So we went and tracked everything, but the basic sessions in a couple of days, and then days of guitar overdubs, and I did the vocals on the evening. It was funny. I came in about 8:00. It was quite. I was going home for dinner. It was all very gentlemanly hours and stuff. And I came in at 8:00 and said to Greg, "I think I'm going to do the vocals tonight." And he was like, "I don't think so. I think we might get one done." And by about 10:15, we had like 2 tracks to go. So we just pushed through it and did it. But for me, I've been sitting there all week playing the guitar and listening to these amazing performances of Greg and Marika, and I was just chomping at the bit to sing them. It was a complete work when I brought it in. I knew exactly what I wanted to do and what I wanted to achieve, and what emotionally these songs meant to me, and how I was going to approach singing them. So the actual singing part of it was almost
self-actualization comes, in fact, at those moments for you as a musician, as an artist, when all of that comes together so quickly. It's like, is that, or can you self-actualize in this day and age in a semi-permanent condition?
I think you can. Obviously we're always moving and we're always evolving, and the self-actualized version of me today, as opposed to the self-actualized version of me in 15 years, will have a different context, like we were talking about.
Yeah.
But, one of my profound musical memories was I would have been 15 maybe, and I was at Whangarei Boys High, and it was the end of lunch time, and I had my Walkman, and and the bell went, and I was walking across the quad, and in the middle of the quad, I was listening to The Wall by Pink Floyd, and the second guitar solo on Comfortably Numb came on. And just honestly, there's like boys running. I've got this movie of it in my head. There's boys running in every direction down the different classes, and I'm in this slow-mo, like the camera's going around. And there's like tears streaming down my face, and I've tried to unpack that moment so many times. And for what it is for me is that it's listening to the sound of someone self-actualizing. That song is about shutting down, emotionally shutting down. That's what Roger Waters is singing about. So, and then that guitar solo is the complete opposite of that. It's such an emotional explosion of. And so someone like Dave Gilmour in his very Englishness isn't going to say that, or isn't going to talk about it, but he can show it, he can manifest it on the guitar. And it's that thing that, Roger Waters tells you what he's thinking or tells you what he's feeling, and Dave Gilmour just shows you. And I think what I was struck by, I was imagining like a 10-year-old David Gilmour learning Hank Marvin tunes as laying on his bed, in the early 60s or late 50s. And then fast forward to 1978 and playing that guitar solo. If that's not the sound of someone self-actualizing on their instrument,
Yeah.
I don't know what it is. And that's what I've been really drawn to in this reimagined or rejuvenated idea of doing the Gramsci project again, is that facility to go somewhere else emotionally, beyond lyrics and beyond singing, that for me, the electric guitar is the primary instrument of achieving. It's the bends, it's got such a facility for emotional engagement. It's the only instrument I can really think of where you can tell, maybe the drums, immediately who's doing it. If I give the same guitar to Martin Knopfler, Jeff Beck, Dave Gilmour,
yeah,
you would know instantly who was playing it.
But it's interesting. You there's 2 points here. The first point is you're talking about self-actualization, and of course Maslow. I presume you're talking the same sort of hierarchy as Maslow did, but he sees it more as a progression. You're seeing it as something that comes and goes and repeats itself. I guess it could well be a series of progressions.
Builds upon it.
Basic needs to the pinnacle of the triangle. But the point is, the other point is that there's must be a converse. If that is the case, then there must be a converse, which leads me to the whole issue of well-being, musicians' well-being, because for all the highs, there must be just as many lows, and there must have been a hell of a lot of lows for people in your position over the last 2 years. And how do you cope with that?
Well, that's music. For me, the music is the medicine. Making this record was my way through all of those thoughts, and without getting too specific about it, you can probably tell by listening to the record there are some dark nights of the soul moments, but it's having that facility to the catharsis of playing, yes. And without the need for verbose eloquence, to have that exact thought. Again, I can play it on the guitar faster than I can explain it.
Yes.
And that's it's something like Ourselves on Hinterlands, the first track. That song is fundamentally about self-loathing, I suppose, or fear, or all that sort of stuff. But the guitar solos are like, fuck that, here I am, this is me, and it's like a bulldozer. It's like all the angels of heaven flying down, and and squadrons, and it's just like, here I am, this is me, on full display.
Got it. Well, back to the album. I see my colleague at music.net has been mildly critical of what I think he's talking about, the homogeneity of the album, and I kind of guess he's referring to the concise nature of each song. And when listened to as a collection, he's trying to convey that it tends to suppress the latent power within each song. Now, I'm not sure whether I agree with that, because it starts to tread the path of dividing an album up into individual pieces and buying singles and all that stuff. And obviously I'm old school and like a body of work, but what I felt in virtually all those songs is I'm sure something that we'll see, and that is the opportunity for you guys to break out and extend into some form of prog rock paradise, and you can't do that with every song on the album.
No, I mean, definitely, it's the idea of this record was very much inspired by records like 17 Seconds and Disintegration, where there is a uniformity of sound. It's meant to have like one set of clothes. Well, within that, there are obviously tracks like Make Up Your Own Mind and Epiphany that have more synth-based things, but it's fundamentally one guitar sound, one bass sound. It's that band playing those songs, as opposed to say something like Inheritance, the previous record, which was far more proggy in the way it segues and everything, especially on the vinyl edition. And for me, that's the design of it, is to have that homogeneity, a homogeneous quality. The record that we're working towards next is actually, in my mind, it's 4 10-minute long tracks or 4
okay.
tracks. It's going to be really, it's fully going there. I mean, my big record at the moment is Floating Points, the Pharoah Sanders record with the London.
Sorry, who was that?
Floating Points. It's an amazing record with Pharoah Sanders and the London Symphony Orchestra.
Okay.
It's something like 16 movements, but it's one long piece of music. I'm really drawn to that. I wanted, the other thing about this record, the Hinterlands, is designed to be played live. It's in that visceral sort of, and to be part of a live set. So the idea that because if you play 3 11-minute long songs, then you've sort of eaten up quite a lot of your set, right?
Yeah.
You guys start doing 3-hour concerts to get, if you want to play Shining and Crazy Diamond and Dogs and Echoes, then you're into it, and if you want to play Thick as a Brick as well. So it's meant to have that sort of cohesion. And I say that a big record for me growing up was 17 Seconds by The Cure. And what I loved about that was that, that one color palette, very stark, JC 120. And then I think they perfected it on Disintegration. And then, and that's why, it's a monochromatic album cover as well. Whereas say something in Inheritance is like a rich Renaissance, highly romantic sort of color palette, like we were speaking about before.
Yeah, right. No, I love it. I think it's a great progression, but I'm disappointed, of course, we're not going to be able to see it live soon.
No, we were meant to be playing. There meant to be 2 gigs already, and another one at the Power Station in April. But we're going to hold off for a while until there's absolute certainty around that, because it's too much. I mean, again, having a band like mine, just getting people. You think herding cats is hard? Try herding the Gramsci.
Well, look, I'm just looking at the time here. That's probably about a wrap for this session. We could talk. I could talk to you all day.
Yeah, that's good.
Thanks so much for your time and your honesty, and a man of deep thought and much reflection, and it just adds another dimension to the music that we hear. And so, mate, congratulations! Another very fine piece of work. I hope it goes well, and beyond that, I really hope we get to see it live pretty soon.
Thank you very much.
Cheers.